rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. And, wow, I got to tell you, over the weekend, it was very refreshing. Very refreshing to see that we actually have a true commander-in-chief and president in the office. And, well, granted, he wasn't like physically in the office over the weekend, but that's okay. He's in the position and he is doing what he needs to be done. I'll explain a little bit more, although I'm sure my wise whiskey warriors out there know already what it is in terms of what happened. But let's just say the left kind of had a little bit of a thing at first, and they got schooled. They got shown what a real president does. However, before I get into that, I have a very big announcement for our headline promo sponsor that I got to get to. So let's go ahead and get the Pledge of Allegiance going. Tonight is going to be led by G. That's right. G is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And so if you are of mind, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one like me, and place your hand over your heart and join in with G as he recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you, G, for that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style, and then take that audio or video file or whatever it is and attach it to an email. You can send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at americanperspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at americanperspective.online. Also, too, heads up, Wednesday night, which is our pet of the week. I don't have one for this week. So if you've got one, please send it in. You can send it to the same address, fans at americanperspective.online, and we will get it on the program. Same thing for question of the week at the end of the week, but I'll try and remind you a little bit later on for that one. So pet of the week for Wednesday. Got to get them in. Get them in. Get them in. All right, let's get this going. This is a special announcement. I told you it was coming. You knew it was coming. Jonathan Oogie Richards went ahead and told us that it was coming. Well, the day is here. That is right. The day is here for the transfer over to from TGRN Blues, which is no longer, to Walter Trout Blues Rock Radio. That's right. Walter Trout Blues Rock Radio. And let's just take a listen to why and how and what is going on with all of this from our TGRN CEO and founder, Jonathan Oogie Richards.
Walter Trout is on TGRN. We've got the blues to bring.
So Walter Trout, he's played with the greats and in turn has become an icon himself in blues rock. Why is this important? Well, his story is fable. And for us to be able to tell his story, going back from the very roots of his founding days of a musician to where he's ascended to today, taking his story and taking it to radio and being able to put the soundtrack to his life, his friendships, his relationships, his trials, his tribulations, his heartbreaks, his triumphs. All of that comes together with Walter Trout Blues Rock Radio by TGRN. We get to tell his story every day.
Blues rock to the bone. Feel the heart it brings. Walter Trout is on TGRN. We got the blues to bring you home. I said,
That's right. Walter Trout has come to TGRN and now has his own signature radio channel as a part of our station. So Walter Trout Blues Radio, that is the announcement for tonight. Walter Trout Blues Radio is the name. And I got to tell you, I've listened to it and it's got a lot of hard rockin' stuff. So those of you who are into rock, give it a try. And, you know, don't let the blues rock label kind of, you know, throw you. It is a hard charging guitar slinging kind of sound. You can go and check it out. You can check it out at tgrn.net. That's tgrn.net, where you can find our app if you want to listen to it on the radio or on your cell phone. Your mobile device, I believe it's what it's called. But you can also listen to it directly through the browser. So tgrn.net gives you a widget that you can hit and you can listen to it on the browser. Also to download our app, as well as we still exist in the Live 365, iHeartRadio and Odyssey catalog of digital radio stations out there. So you can check us out there. As well, any one of those three apps, and you can check them all out. New logos, new look, and new sound, but hey, it's all rocking every single hour of every single day. It is 100% rocking all over the place at TGRN and Walter Trout Blues Rock Radio. Go and check us out, tgrn.net, based out of Austin, Texas. All right. That was our big announcement. That's fantastic. We finally got everything worked out, finally got everything done. So, and yes, Buddy Weiser pops up. Is the app in the Google Play Store? It absolutely is. It is also in the iOS store, whatever that's called. I can't remember what that's called. Somebody help me out here. Hold on, I'll find it. Where is it? Yeah, the App Store and Google Play. You can go to both of them and you can download our app from both of them. So, which connects you directly to us as well. So there you go. Okay, let's move on. So this weekend, a leftist lunatic from the South, and no, I'm not talking about from the South of America. Well, technically, yeah, it was from the South of America. At least I think it is. Maybe it's in Central America. I'm not all that great on world geography, but I can tell you that in Colombia, there was a leftist president that he's not very well liked, by the way. Oh, Bonnie, I'll have to, the key with that one is you have to say, play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. And what Bonnie is asking is, my Alexa doesn't want to play TGRN. So what you have to do is you have to say, play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. And unfortunately, because it's a complicated command, sometimes it doesn't go through. But I can tell you it does. It sometimes takes a minute. She's got to shuffle all the way through all of their catalog in order to find it. So anyway, Buddy, thank you. South Central America. Okay. So there we go. But anyway, Colombia's president decided that, hey, you know what? I know Trump is sending us a plane load of people. We don't want those people back, so we're just going to refuse to allow that plane to land in our country. Well, what ended up happening is they ended up landing in Bolivia, nearby. But during the time that he made this announcement and said, we're standing up to the United States. And I'm sorry, I don't sound like him. I don't have a Central American accent for you, but he's like, we're going to stand up to the United States. Yeah, I think it was maybe 40 minutes later, he freaking bent over and acquiesced completely. I mean, it wasn't even 1 hour. It really wasn't. And the funny thing about all of this is that the left on the socials, they were like, yes, Colombian president stands up to Trump. Yes. Oh, and they all got excited and they were all putting their names out and, oh, it was just offered. Yeah, no, no, it ended up to where he just completely acquiesced. He dived over the line, even though he initially refused to accept the deportation flights. His name is Gustavo Petro, and he's not very well liked by his people, by the way. And it really didn't take him long to backtrack. He also apparently caved to every single one of Donald Trump's terms. And the reason why is because Donald Trump pretty much simply just said, now, you lefties, hey, I'm talking directly to you leftists. You got to take out your freaking cotton out of your ears that you've been putting in there to keep the sand out of them while you stick your head in the sand like a freaking ostrich, okay? I'm talking directly to you. This is how tariffs work, okay? This is how the threat of tariffs is supposed to work. And Trump uses them in exactly this manner. Now, just like with Mexico and Canada, when I explained this to you before, we weren't actually going to get to a point where there were going to be tariffs. I mean, eventually, I'm sure we'll run across somebody who's stupid enough to go ahead and just allow it to continue to that, to that end. But Trump, he wields tariffs as the stick in the carrot and stick approach. And he's not playing around with this. So reportedly, he was on the golf course when he truthed this out. This wasn't even like a complete 100% communicate. I'm sure they were communicating from the White House at the time, but supposedly for the Truth Social, he posted on Truth Social. Yeah, I just heard that Gustavo Petro blocked our plane. Here's what's going to happen, Gustavo. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, because I can't do a very good Trump impression. So here's what's going to happen, Gustavo. We're going to start off with a 25% tariff starting tomorrow. And then the next day it goes up to 50%. Then the next day it goes up to 100%. And will continue to increase until you do what we tell you. And like I said, it didn't take much more than about 40 minutes, I think. I think it was maybe 45 minutes for him to just go, okay, that's it. We're done. We're not going to do it. Well, yeah. So then the other thing that the president also said is like, you know what? We're going to save you some time and trouble, sir. We're going to send you my presidential plane for the people. Okay, you don't have to fly them to me. We'll send you a plane that you can fill up. I'm telling you, people, this is what a leader does. This is what a leader does. And you know what's really funny is these leftists on these social media outlets, they're sitting here complaining about the fact, oh, Donald Trump, he's at Mar-a-Lago golfing again. Oh. Well, all I got to tell you is I know a good buddy of mine, long time ago, he and I were talking about golf and how much golf is, gets done and how much business gets done on the golf course. Donald Trump is literally on that same mindset that being on the golf course is just a place. He can do it with a phone. He doesn't need a big old resolute desk. He doesn't need to stay in the office to be able to be reachable and make decisions and make things happen. Much to the chagrin of the left, his golfing, he does more business and more activities on the golf course than Joe Biden actually did in the Oval Office. Now, notice I said Joe Biden, not Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton it did all kinds of action in the Oval Office. Anyway, sorry. I digress. Well, it wasn't that long either, by the way, that after Petro did this about face, well, apparently now Colombia, I got to show you this. Well, apparently Colombia, according to Breitbart, is now sending an emergency delegation to D.C. in order to fix this leftist president's mess. They are actually sending a contingent from their government, and they announced this late on Sunday, that it will send the foreign minister, Luis Gilberto Murillo, and an emergency delegation to Washington, D.C. to resolve this diplomatic crisis caused by the radical leftist president Gustavo Petro's blocking a flight of deportees to the United States. Now, the other thing that was really interesting is that after Donald Trump said what he said, Gustavo also responded publicly and said, hey, well, if you're going to tariff us, we're going to tariff you back. And the left all thought that this was going to be just absolutely glorious, that there was a man who were from another country, who was willing to stand up to the orange Cheeto, let's say. Their words, not mine. Yeah, he caved like a freaking house of cards when you get into a little bit of flow. A little bit of air flow going by those house of cards. He just fell right over. Welcome to the age of FAFO in American politics today. All I can say is that this is fantastic. This is exactly the kind of president that I think everybody who was voted for Trump expected him to do this. That everybody that voted for Trump wants this Trump in office. So, obviously Trump has been doing all kinds of different things. He's been, pushing things around and all that, but it's not just Trump, by the way. Trump is obviously the most, shall we say, public figure of this kind of a thing. But I can tell you, though, that it's not just him. And this is part of the reason why people like Dan Bongino mention that people are policy. And this is true. People are policy. Okay? And the picks that Donald Trump has made, from, Marco Rubio to Dan Ratcliffe to Pete Hegseth, to Tulsi Gabbard, although I'm not 100% sold on her, but hey, he's the boss. He's the man in charge. He's in the office. And so we might as well just go ahead and give him who he wants to be able to perform the duties that he is after. Well, you'd think that Donald Trump is the only one that has stones out of that group that he's put together. Yeah. Well, I think that we're going to see an entirely different, and the world itself is going to see an entirely different administration. Here on Newsmax, Rubio threatens bounties on Taliban leaders over detained Americans. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody remembers the story of when Donald Trump went to, in his first term, went to Afghanistan and told the leader of the Taliban, or the leaders of the Taliban, basically, hey, here's a picture of your house. If another U.S. soldier gets killed while you're in charge, yeah, your house is gone. We're just going to get rid of it. And yes, I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much the way that he presented it to the man. Well, here we are. Rubio is doing essentially something similar. And again, this is following the policy, the foreign policy that was so effectively carried by Ronald Reagan, which is peace through strength. Not saying that he was the only one throughout history that has done it, but he's the most modern of the leaders that has carried it. You also have to understand, too, that, speak softly and carry a big stick. That was, I believe, Teddy Roosevelt said that. So, this whole idea of peace through strength has carried throughout American history and American culture. And so, yeah. Anyway, apparently Marco Rubio on Saturday threatened bounties on the heads of Afghanistan's Taliban leaders, sharply escalating the tone as he said the more Americans may be detained in the country than previously thought. Well, gee, all of this, keep in mind, all of this is due to that disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal that Joe Biden and Mark Milley presided over. Continuing in the piece here, the threat comes days after the Afghan Taliban government and the United States swapped prisoners in one of the final acts of former President Joe Biden. The new top U.S. diplomat issued a harsh warning via social media in a rhetorical style strikingly similar to his boss, President Donald Trump. Rubio wrote on X, just hearing the Taliban is holding more American hostages than has been reported. If this is true, we will have to immediately place a very big bounty on their top leaders, maybe even bigger than the one we had on bin Laden, referring to the al-Qaeda leader killed by the U.S. forces back in 2011. Rubio did not describe who the other Americans might be, but there have long been accounts of missing Americans whose cases were not formally taken up by the U.S. government as wrongful detentions. In the deal with the Taliban, or with the Biden administration, I should say, the Taliban freed the best-known American detained in Afghanistan, Ryan Corbett, who had been living with his family in the country and was seized in August of 2022. Also freed was William McKenty, an American about whom little information has been released. The United States, in turn, freed Khan Mohammed, who was serving a life sentence in a California prison. Mohammed was convicted of trafficking heroin and opium into the United States and was accused of seeking rockets to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan. The United States offered a bounty of $25 million for information leading to the capture or killing of Osama bin Laden shortly after the September 11, 2001 terror attacks, with Congress later authorizing the Secretary of State to offer up to $50 million. No one is believed to have collected the bounty for bin Laden, who was killed in a U.S. raid in Pakistan. So, yeah. Guess what, everybody? It's a new dawn. There's a new sheriff in town, and that sheriff ain't afraid to pull out his weapon whenever it is needed. And the world is starting to realize all of this, by the way. The world is starting to wake up and understand that, yeah, America's back. We're going to be throwing our weight around when it is necessary. And if you don't negotiate with us, you're back in the FAFO part of the equation. Well, it took let's see, how many years have I been doing this podcast? I've been doing this thing for about 5 years. I started when COVID was rampant. And yeah, so, yeah, they finally got around to the whole idea that the lab leak, which, by the way, if you go all the way back to in fact, I had some videos that were completely cut out on YouTube. I think, I'm not too sure if Facebook actually hit a couple of them. I think they did. But I can tell you that, like, YouTube cut me completely out because of medical misinformation when I was talking about the lab leak theory, when I was talking about the true fact that the masks were not going to stop the spread of COVID, and those kinds of things. And especially when I was I'm trying to think of the exact episode, but this is like going way, way back, by the way. But I do recall talking about the CGG genome combination that only occurs in lab genetic experiments. They have yet to find that particular genome combination naturally occurring in the wild in the US. And anyway, it took them long enough, but the CIA is finally, and of course that's, thanks to Director Ratcliffe, by the way. But now the official view is that the lab leaked the COVID-19 virus. And in fact, by the way, there's still some potential investigations that will potentially go on. And I keep saying potential because you never know when government's kind of a fickle thing. You never know when they're going to change their mind and go after it. Or change their mind and that kind of stuff. So, anyway, so, there was a time, and this is according to Front Page, and this is the article. There was a time when simply mentioning that COVID-19 came from a Chinese lab got you banned on Facebook and YouTube. Now, with the CIA's endorsement of the lab leak theory, it's now the complete official view. Notably, the FBI already supported this theory a long time ago, as did many people part of the Defense Intelligence Agency. But an official link to WHO, which, by the way, Trump just withdrew from, managed to bias the official intel community assessment. The CIA assessment isn't even a product of the new Trump administration, but actually took place under the Biden administration. But it's just now being released. So in other words, the Biden administration was hanging on to this report from the CIA because they didn't want it to come out. Gee, I wonder what was happening here not too long ago, like within the last 6 months. Could it have been an election? That would have just been another win in the Trump column. That would have just been another conspiracy theory that came true in the Trump column. That would have been, oh my gosh, yet another thing that Donald Trump was right on. Anyway, so now basically what's really broken out is the fact that the CIA is finally admitting, and they started admitting it, saying, well, it's low probability. Yeah. Yeah, it's so low that everybody knows that it that it came from there. I mean, seriously, come on, people. This is like, get ready for this, by the way. Seriously, I'm just saying this. Get ready for a lot of these little things to start coming out. You know, especially with things like Trump releasing the JFK, MLK, and RFK documents, which, just a real quick side note on that, I'm not exactly sure there's anything left that's really going to make it past the declassification censors on that. I'm sure that there's still parts and pieces that are going to stay declassified regardless of Trump's order. But yeah, I'm just saying that yeah, it's just one of those things that we're gonna see some of these things keep coming out, and this is glorious to know. This is glorious to know. Well, again, in terms of the number of people who are, again, people are policy, keep that in mind, but the number of people who are no longer taking any crap from anybody, not only on the world stage, but also the mainstream media. So J.D. Vance did his first sit-down interview, appearing on Face the Nation on Sunday against Margaret Brennan. And this was, of course, on CBS News, which, again, is, Face the Nation, CBS. Anyway, she and he sat down for this interview, and I got to tell you, this guy, the more that I hear him speak and the more that I hear him own these people, the more that I am happy that Donald Trump picked him to be his VP. So if I can get this to work, I hope so. Let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of that interview on Face the Nation.
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals have been properly vetted. But there are 30,000 people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees. But my primary concern as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people are vetted. These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted. And many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country. And I think most Americans agree with me.
So, yeah, most Americans do agree. We do not want unvetted or even vetted illegal. That's the key. Illegal aliens in our country. We don't want them. We don't want them here. They are illegal. That's the whole point. Well, I mean, let's be honest. That was just one exchange that J.D. Vance had. Now, I got to tell you, it's been a while. It's been a long while since I've actually seen somebody, and let's be honest, there's very few people who can actually handle these morons. Oftentimes what helps to handle these people is just ignore or refuse the premise of the question that they're asking you. And most people don't. Most people are like, well, and they try to argue with them. J.D. Vance, he presents a master class in just ignoring the premise. Just ignore the premise of their question, where the question is coming from. And he touched apparently on that in that interview on a multitude of issues. So this is coming from the Epoch Times. He touched on lowering prices. Now, here's here's one of the questions, of course, that was being presented by Brennan. And Vance, of course, was pressed on how the Trump administration is planning on lowering prices of groceries, which, of course, was a 2024 campaign promise. The vice president, God, it just seems weird. I got to say that. The vice president, in response, said that getting prices down would take time, noting that Trump only took office less than a week ago. And this is true. This is absolutely true. It is going to take time for these policies to get into effect. For an example, it took time for inflation to react to Joe Biden's reckless spending. In fact, it took roughly 18 months for inflation to catch up to that reckless spending. But the vice president, of course, responded and said, there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things they need. And this is true. Now, Brennan pushed back on him, and Vance made the comment that Trump cannot undo all of the damage of Joe Biden's presidency in 4 days. No kidding. It's like Rome wasn't built in a day. No, it wasn't. Vance continued and said, Donald Trump has already taken multiple executive actions that are going to lower energy prices. And I do believe that means consumers are going to see lower prices at the pump and at the grocery store, but it's going to take a little bit of time. Trump's decision to address energy prices and increase drilling will also impact everyday costs. So, yeah. So we'll see what happens there. They also discussed the birthright citizenship part, and Vance defended Trump's executive order, which currently is temporarily blocked by a federal judge. But Vance said, America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first. If you are here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. Yep, that's true. But the key there is if you're here permanently and lawfully, which again is what I've been arguing and pointing out about the 14th Amendment and how it came to be during the congressional debates. Now, Vance mentioned that if you come here on vacation and you have a baby in an American hospital, that baby doesn't automatically become an American citizen. And also, if you're an illegal alien and you come here temporarily, hopefully your child does not become an American citizen by virtue of their by just having been born on American soil. He said it's a very basic principle in American immigration law that if you want to become an American citizen, you've got to do it the right way. And the American people in their collective wisdom have welcomed you into our national community. Then you become a citizen. Now, he was questioned about big tech, and this one in particular is a kind of an interesting question, because I had somebody hit me up on X at one point and say, hey, all the big tech bros were at the inauguration. What do you think that means? And I responded back and simply said, well, it means they paid for their ticket. I mean, now, was that ticket maybe donating to the campaign? Sure. But they paid their money. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's any kind of like backwater deal or backdoor deal, back alley, back room coercion going on or anything like that. People are just getting so uptight and jumping toward certain conclusions that they just don't seem to understand. Well, When Vance was asked about the founders of the CEO or big tech companies appearing at his inauguration, Vance said that the administration believes fundamentally that big tech does have too much power. He said they can either respect America's constitutional rights, they can stop engaging in censorship, and if they don't, you can be absolutely sure that Donald Trump's leadership is not going to look too kindly on them. So, of course, you saw, if anybody, I mean, anytime the camera panned over there, you had Mark Zuckerberg, Bezos, Oracle's Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, Apple's Tim Cook, and, of course, Google's Sundar Pichai, among others, that attended the inauguration ceremony. So, yeah, there you go. You also need to understand, too, that I'm sure that those people were there as a part of Trump's announcement of that $500 billion artificial intelligence project that would be backed by Oracle, SoftBank, OpenAI, and among other companies. Anyway, so another topic that came up was last week, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and other Catholic groups issued a statement critical of the Trump administration's immigration policies. Okay, to allow for U.S. immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and schools. Now, I got a story about the school thing here in just a couple of minutes. But Catholic healthcare, Catholic charities, organizations, and churches and other social ministries, work to feed, house, heal, educate, and meet people's needs in communities across our nation. Through our parishes, shelters, hospitals, churches, and other church institutions, we recognize that this dignity is not dependent on a person's citizenship or immigration status, their statement said. Well, Vance, who is Catholic, said, quote, "As a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement." He made a comment that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has frankly not been a good partner in common sense immigration enforcement that the American people voted for. He said, "I think the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns or are they actually worried about their bottom line?" That's a pretty big charge, but the shoe fits, I guess. So he was asked by Brennan on that whether he thinks the order ending the Biden administration policies on ICE officials detaining people near churches and schools will have a chilling effect. Vance said that he hopes it does. "I desperately hope it has a chilling effect on illegal immigrants coming into our country." Yeah. And let's see. He was finally talked about or asked about Trump's January 6th pardons. And he said, "We looked at 1,600 cases, and the thing that came out of it, Margaret, is that there is a massive denial of due process of liberty. And a lot of people were denied their constitutional rights. The president believes that. I believe that. And I think he made the right decision." Now, he was asked about whether he thinks that violence against police officers was not appropriate. That the DOJ was weaponized under the previous administration, and he basically responded and said, "The pardon power is not just for people who are angels or people who are perfect. And of course, we love our law enforcement and want people to be peaceful, with everybody, but especially with our good cops. We rectified a wrong, and I stand by it." Now, here's the thing, folks, and I kind of talked to you a little bit about when we were talking about the pardon power. The pardon power was discussed in the Federalist Papers, and I read that piece of it for you. It was advocated by Alexander Hamilton to be a check on a rampant judiciary to where the president could use his power, his pardon power, which, by the way, is quite far-reaching, to use that pardon power in order to correct when the judiciary gets out of control and runs roughshod over individuals. And that is literally what's been happening in the case of the January 6ers. And so his pardon power being utilized in this particular way is exactly what the pardon power was designed for and designed to do. Now, notice I said just a minute ago to hold on to your hats with regards to schools and the ICE thing. Well, the left-wing media, the left-stream propagandist media has been so hit with the whole rock'em sock'em robots kind of idea. That's a Dan Bongino thing too. Idea of, being hit with a left and a right and a left and a right from the Trump administration that they don't even know where the hell to go with it. They actually ran with a completely false news story about ICE raids at Chicago public schools. This in town hall, talking about it, saying that we're not even a week into the second Trump presidency and the media is already running with total nonsense about an ICE raid that occurred in Chicago. You can imagine how newsrooms must have reacted. ICE agents harassing kids in the Chicago public school system. Except there was a problem. It wasn't ICE. It was actually Secret Service. The U.S. Secret Service told the I-Team they approached a Southside school Friday. Chicago Public Schools officials had initially said the agents were from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Secret Service said that they were investigating a threat, and they had responded to a house. They then said that they were then told the person they wanted to talk to was at Hamline Elementary School. But they did not enter the school, the Secret Service told the I-Team. And of course, this is via ABC7 in Chicago. The alleged threat the Secret Service was investigating was not immediately clear. CPS officials initially claimed at least one ICE agent was denied entry to the Southside Elementary School Friday morning. ICE said it was not a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement encounter. See, folks, this is part of the reason why we have to take stories like this and take an extra beat, an extra breath, an extra moment to wait until the full story comes out. Because remember, the media, first of all, wants to tell you a story, not necessarily the story, and the media has to race to be first, not necessarily accurate. Yeah. So, there was a lot of posts on X about it, and the people, people will be, people were freaking out about it and that kind of stuff. This whole deportation thing has really got the left like thrown for a loop. So anyway, now let's move on a little bit to a new article or new announcement that came out. You remember the 17 inspectors general that they got rid of. The Trump administration got rid of. I talked to you about it on Saturday, how the law actually does state that the president can fire at will, even though he has to follow or file some sort of paperwork, which is likely unconstitutional anyway. But now we hear that acting Attorney General James McHenry. Now, if you think that Pam Bondi is going to be a bulldog, just wait until this guy really gets into full office. I think this guy's vying for like deputy. Anyway, the Justice Department fires more than a dozen key officials that were part of Special Counsel Jack Smith's team. Jackass Smith. Acting Attorney General James McHenry does not trust these officials to assist in faithfully implementing the president's agenda. And that's why they were gone. So this, according to Fox News, the Justice Department is firing more than a dozen key officials who worked on Special Counsel Jackass Smith's team prosecuting President Donald Trump after acting Attorney General James McHenry said they cannot be trusted to faithfully implement the president's agenda. McHenry has transmitted a letter to each official notifying them of their termination, and the Justice Department officially and exclusively told Fox News Digital. Now, it's unclear how many officials received that letter, and the names were not immediately released. But a DOJ official told Fox News Digital, quote, "Today, Acting Attorney General James McHenry terminated the employment of a number of DOJ officials who played a significant role in prosecuting President Trump. In light of their actions, the Acting Attorney General does not trust these officials to assist in faithfully implementing the president's agenda." This action is consistent with the mission of ending the weaponization of government, the official also told Fox News Digital. So they're starting to clean house. Let's just put it that way. And it looks good. It looks good to me. It's kind of glorious, to be honest with you. Excuse me, in terms of moving forward with that. That's just fantastic. All right. Well, the Daily Wire has reported that GOP investigator, and I think this is James Comer is who they're referring to here, doubts that Biden's preemptive pardons for family would actually hold up in court. House Oversight Chairman James Comer said he did not think the preemptive pardons that President Joe Biden issued to members of his family would, in the final moments of his administration, would hold up in court. Just minutes before Donald Trump was sworn in, just to remind you, for a second presidential term last week, Biden announced the pardons for his brother, James Biden, James Biden's wife, Sarah Jones, which is his sister, Sarah Jones Biden, his sister, Valerie Biden Owens, Valerie Owens's husband, John T. Owens, and his other brother, Francis W. Biden, citing the prospect of politically motivated investigations. Biden had previously pardoned his son, Hunter, who had been convicted of tax evasion and gun crimes. Comer, who led a corruption-focused impeachment investigation into Biden and actually wrote a book about that inquiry, said the preemptive pardons were a, quote, admission of guilt, and then suggested to Maria Bartiromo on Sunday Morning Futures that scrutiny of the prior administration may continue. Here is that clip, or part of it anyway. So let's take a listen.
Okay, let me move on to the pardons because it was 20 minutes before President Trump was sworn in on Monday. It was 20 minutes to 12 on January 20th when President Biden announced he was pardoning siblings minutes before leaving the White House. The pardon applies to James Biden, his brother, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden Owens, John Owens, Francis Biden. The White House announced that his family could be subject to, quote, politically motivated investigations after he leaves office. Your reaction?
This is an admission of guilt by Joe Biden. Everybody in America knows it. We said early on in the investigation, I went on your show many times, Maria, and you were one of the heroes that allowed me to have a platform to give the American people the truth, that 10 different Biden family members were involved in receiving incremental payments that had been laundered through a series of shell companies. He's pardoned 6 of them. He's pardoned 6 of those family members right here, including the 5 he pardoned at the last minute, and then his son, Hunter Biden. Again, this is an admission of guilt. Why would Joe Biden do this in the very last act when he knew the media would be focused on Trump's swearing in and all of that? He didn't have the courage or the guts to have a press conference to announce it. And he said he was worried about investigations. The only investigation in the world that ever mentioned those spouses was our House Oversight Committee investigation that listed the 10 different family members that received incremental payments.
Well, Congressman, you did a very good job. You identified the bank statements, you identified whistleblowers, and you did a very deep investigation. We all covered it. Thank you for the compliment. You wrote a book about it, All the President's Money, by James Comer, which is out now. Congratulations on the book. But I've got to tell you, my audience is a little disappointed. So with these pardons, should we just expect, after all that work you put into it, after all the conversations we've had, they got away with it?
I certainly hope not. The ball's going to be in Pam Bondi's court. We're communicating with her people right now. I've had a good meeting with Kash Patel. One thing I'm confident is going to happen, and you saw that with John Radcliffe, we're going to hold people in the government accountable that were involved in the cover-up. He's already held the 51 intelligence officials that lied to the American people when they said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, when most of them, in fact, knew that it was not Russian disinformation. Now we want to get the people that were involved in the cover-ups, because what we found in our investigation, and I write about it extensively in my book, is that there were 4 different agencies investigating the Bidens: the IRS, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. And obviously they wanted to get to Joe Biden, because none of this money would be coming into the president's son or brother were it not for Joe Biden. Every time they got ready to ask Joe Biden, they were told to stand down by a deep state actor. I want those people held accountable. And then with respect to the Bidens, I don't think these preemptive pardons would hold up in court. I would like to see a jury that would be sympathetic to what he said. We're pardoning you for anything you may have done over the past decade pertaining to influence peddling. That's baloney, and no jury in America would buy that, in my opinion.
So you think the preemptive pardons are not legitimate?
I don't, but there are a lot better legal minds than mine, I'm sure. But, you know, I don't think the average person that works hard and pays taxes has much sympathy for a president that in his last act in office pardoned his entire family for financial public corruption and didn't have the guts to tell anybody why he did it.
So that kind of brings in an interesting question with regards to it, because again, as I pointed out, the pardon power of the presidency is extremely broad and has been held up by the Supreme Court every time it has been used. So it's kind of interesting to think that maybe he is suggesting that the pardon power can't extend that far. I do know that the pardon power itself, pretty much everybody agrees that no, you can't be pardoned before you do the crime, but you can be pardoned if you think you did the crime. And so anyway, it's, you know, we'll just have to kind of see. We'll just have to kind of see what happens. Now, keep in mind, Kash Patel is an FBI, going to be the the FBI director. And then, of course, John Radcliffe has already been confirmed as the CIA director. Pam Bondi. I keep saying Pat. I don't know why, but Pam Bondi is also his nominee to become U.S. Attorney General. So we're going to have to see where these people, you know, if they get through confirmation hearings and that kind of thing. So this is again, I don't think any of this is going to quit. We're going to see bits and pieces and things like that kind of trickle out. It's going to be more of a, not quite so much more than a drip, drip, drip. It's going to be a little bit more of a slight, slow stream, I think. But still, the point is that all of this is going to start coming to light, all because we now have a real president in the Oval Office and the White House. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Hey, don't forget, okay, need a pet for Pet of the Week. All right, need a pet for Pet of the Week. So send that off to fans@americanperspective.online. That's fans@americanperspective.online. Also, too, head on over to rumble.com if you haven't already. Get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are there, signed up and signed in, search up the American Perspective channel. Hit that green follow button to make sure that you get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to hit all of those thumbs up buttons, those like buttons, whatever they are across all my platforms, whether it's X, Facebook, YouTube, and of course the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.